presentation on Shubha Chakraborty's Dasgupta article on comparative literature in India, an overview of its history. These are the presenter, me, Adi, and Hemali Parmar. These are the points which we cover up. Now, the Dasgupta's article cover up the abstract that the article evolution of comparative literature in India, especially focus and beginning at the Jadavpur University at the Kolkata in West Bengal, under the influence of Tagore's vision of world literature or Vishwa Sahitya. Well, initially the influence by the British literary study, and the department gradually decolonized and focus on the decolonized process. After the process of the decolonized, it emphasizing in Indian literature and Southern literature. Shift in the approach are evident, moving from the influence studies to cross-cultural relation and reception studies. The field has expanded in encompass recently in the voice of marginalized and non-hierarchical relationship and of the literary and cultural relationship. Now the research problem arises that while we reflect of the idea of the comparative literature in India, especially on the history of comparative literature, where it begins and influences, the research problem arises that how has the evolution of comparative literature in India, especially in India, addressed the dual challenges of decolonization and the need for interdisciplinary fields or approaches which focus in inclusivity across of the voice of marginalized and mainstream of in the literature within the global and local literary networks. The objective which focus on the history and growth of comparative literature in India, highlight its focus on Indian literary tradition and voice of marginalized, promote the non-hierarchical and cross-cultural literary connection. Now the key findings in the article that comparative literature, especially in India, as according to Shubha Chakraborty, emerged as the response to colonial influence, aiming to establish indigenous and creative pedagogical practice. Now the methodology, which reflect that the interdisciplinary field and approach of interdisciplinary, which combining the literature, history, social and cultural sciences, the case studies on syllabi, workshop, and voice of marginalized, which focus especially which focus on the voice of marginalized, and the reception studies and adaptation and transformation of texts. Now about the author Shubha Chakraborty Dasgupta. She was a well-known professor of the comparative literature at the Jadavpur University in the Kolkata, West Bengal, and also she was a visiting professor at University of Delhi, and she was teaching as a coordinated research on project edited in the Jadavpur Journal of the comparative literature, and also taught as in the Tokyo University of Foreign Study or Literature. She was especially known for comparative literature and translation, multilingualism in world literature, and affiliation with the part of International Comparative Literature and Association Research Team. Now the main idea or key concept point which discussed in the article that the emergence or development of this comparative literature according to Shubha Chakraborty, which was emerged in 1956 at Jadavpur University, influenced by the Rabindranath Tagore concept of Vishwa Sahitya or world literature. Now, and another one is the focus on decolonization, shifted from the Eurocentric frameworks to indigenous approaches, and the field of various kind of field and methods of interdisciplinary fields, which reflect the translation and cultural study, and also reflect the idea of reception study, and the inclusivity, which emphasize on the voice of marginalized, and also reflect the oral tradition and regional literature. And the connection, which local to global connection, promotes the cross-culture and non-hierarchical literary relationship. And these are the learning outcomes which I find that understand the historical development of comparative literature in India, especially focus by the Chakraborty Dasgupta, analyze the interdisciplinary fields like translation, reception studies, or cultural studies, explore the regional, marginalized, and oral traditional, and appreciate the cross-culture and global literary studies, critically evolved the pedagogical approach in comparative literature. Now, I would like to invite my co-leader Hadi.
Hello everyone. I am discussing the key arguments of Shubha Chakraborty's article. The current goal involves mapping intercultural relations which seeking non-hierarchical connection and understanding literature's role in diverse cultures in the whole world. In the essence, the field has dynamically evolved, which emphasizing contextual engagement with both Indian and non-Western cultures. Chakraborty Das. Subha Chakraborty Dasgupta has divided this article in 7 parts. These are the 7 parts. Let's begin with the first one, the beginnings. The early comparative focus. The aspect of literature in India existed before the formal establishment of comparative literature as a discipline which emphasizing inter-Indian and cross-cultural literary studies. Translation activities in Bengal towards the end of the 19th century, Bengal witnessed large-scale translation activities and discussions about global literary connection, which exemplified by Satyendranath Dutt's vision of fostering the relationships of joy, which published in 1904. Another thing is Rabindranath Tagore's contribution during his time in his 1907 talks, Vishwa Sahitya means worldwide world literature, which laid a conceptual foundation for comparative literature, which focuses on human relationships and communal creation of global literature. Establishment of Jadavpur University's department, which the comparative literature at Jadavpur University was established in 1956, which rooted in the ideals of indigenous education as envisioned by the National Council of Education. Buddhadeva Bose's perspective for the comparative literature, which emphasized moving away from colonial British literature towards exploring French and Indian classical text, which marking the beginnings of the decolonizing approaches. The significant faculty eminent modern poets and translators like Surendranath Datta were instrumental in shaping the creative and intellectual environment of the department. Creative legacy, early students and faculty of the department become influential poets and critics, which fostering the environment of literary creativity. Colonial influence in pedagogy, despite decolonizing impulses, the curriculum retained colonial frameworks, which emphasizing European literary periods alongside Indian and Sanskrit literature. Comparative epistemology, early comparative studies, which focused on aesthetic systems, linking social structures with aesthetics and fostering dialogues between texts like Iliad and the Ramayana. Challenging curriculums in the 1956 syllabus included Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, and Bengali and European literature, emphasizing cross-culture and historical comparisons. Focus on ancient text, Greek and Sanskrit drama, analyzed through the Aristotle's Poetics and Bharata's Natya Shastra were central to early comparative studies. Cultural insight through differences, the comparisons highlighted the both similarities and cultural differences, which contributing to deeper understanding of aesthetics and ethics. emergence of comparative reflection. Comparative study facilitate the ongoing engagement with questions of self, otherness, and cultural relationships. Jadavpur Journal of Comparative Literature, established in 1961, the journal became a significant platform for literary studies in all over the India. Second one is Indian literature, literature as comparative literature. In the 1970s, new pedagogical perspectives brought Indian literature into comparative literature syllabus at Jadavpur University. Indian literature's inclusions was not about asserting national identity, but it also exploring interconnected literary networks. Comparative literature studies at Jadavpur emphasized interdisciplinary approaches, blending literature with other culture forms like painting, sculpture, and architecture. T.S. Satyanath introduced a theory integrating scriptocentric, body-centric, and phonocentric analysis of medieval texts. The discipline began questioning universalist canons and prioritizing Indian literatures and Southern global literatures. Older definitions of Indian literature focused on Sanskrit and canonical texts were replaced with more inclusive approaches to multilingual and performative traditions. Comparative literature addressed the dialectic of unity and difference within Indian literatures as proposed by Ejaz Ahmed, Aziz Ahmed. The field explored the interplay between mainstream and marginalized elite and popular textual and performative traditions. Cecil Kumar Das spreaded the creation of comprehensive, integrative three volumes histories of Indian literature. Interaction between Indian literature and those outside geopolitical boundaries were included in the comparative perspectives. Delhi University's Modern Indian Languages Department also integrated comparative Indian literature into the curriculum in 1974. A national seminar on comparative literature at Delhi University in 1977 marked as a milestone in the field. The MA course in comparative Indian literature at Delhi University began in 1994. Comparative literature pedagogy in Delhi benefited from the diverse student body, which include significant representation from India's northeast. Research on Indian literature fostered pluralist epistemologies through historical, linguistic, and cultural intersection. Third one is centers of comparative literature studies. Comparative literature flourished in South India during 1970s and 80s with centers at Trivandrum, Madurai, Kottayam, Pondicherry, and Bharatidas Dasan University. Madurai Kamraj University established a full-fledged comparative literature studies department within the School of Tamil Studies. Kerala's poet, author, and critic K. Ayappa Panikar contributed significantly to comparative literature, especially in narrative tradition and literary theory. Classical Tamil texts were compared with Greek, Latin, and Japanese texts to explore cross-cultural literary traditions. In the 1980s and 1990s, comparative literature centers emerged in universities like Punjabi University, Dibrugarh University, and Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University. Fourth one is configuration of areas of comparison. In 1980s, Jadavpur University expanded its syllabus to include 100 years of solitude and a text from African and Latin American literatures focusing on resistance and colonial epistemology gaps. In the 1990s, Area studies of African, Latin American, Canadian, and Bangladeshi or Chinese and Japanese literatures were introduced as Jadavpur University. Research on Chinese and Japanese studies in to Indian literature is being pursued at Jadavpur University. The area's study centers of African, Latin American, and Canadian literatures host research annual seminars also at Jadavpur University. Reception studies emerged as a focus emphasizing how elements of foreign literature were adapted to local cultural needs. Romanticism in Bengal reflected local values, which favoring serenity and inner strength while critiquing certain European elements like Byron's sentimentality. Romanticism's reception in Bengal evolved, with Shelley gaining prominence during India's independence movement from revolutionary ideals. Cecil Kumar Das highlighted varied reception of Shakespeare in India's from Parsi theatre to political reinterpretations. Cross-culture reception studies analyzed culture exchanges such as the influence of Sanskrit and German Romanticism and its subsequent return to India. Under Amia Dev's guidance, Jadavpur University's master syllabus emphasized the genres, themes, and literary historiography, which shaping the comparative literature departments nationwide. Reception studies examined both vertical, ancient to modern text, and horizontal, inter and intra-literary relations influence, including the Buddhist, Jaina, and Vedic traditions. Courses like cross-cultural literature transaction explore texts like Kipling's Kim and Tagore's Gora to study the interplay of local and translation forces. The introduction of the semester system at Jadavpur University merged Indian and Western literature courses for integrated understanding. Literary transaction courses addressed the themes like reason and rationalism in European and Indian literature of the 18th and 19th century. My learning outcome is Shubha Chakraborty. Dasgupta's articles provides an in-depth historical trajectory of comparative literature in India with a focus on its decolonizing efforts and interdisciplinary evolution. And the article highlights how the discipline emerged through pioneering institutions like Jadavpur University, which influenced by Tagore's idea of world literature and evolved from Eurocentric frameworks to embrace Indian and marginalized literatures. It emphasized the shift from influence studies to cross-cultural reception, advocating for non-hierarchical, creative, and intercultural literary engagement. For the further presentation, I would like to call Hemal.
Thank you, Hardi and Divya, for the information. Fifth one is research direction. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, comparative literature research expanded across India. Thanks to the University Grants Commission's Special Assistance Program, this program funded various university departments to study literature from a comparative perspective. Departments like those at Calcutta University, Saurashtra University, and Dibrugarh University explored literary relations between India and Europe, translated Indian authors, and documented folk traditions. These initiatives helped create an archive of Indian literature, encouraging research on East-West literary relations, translation studies, and Third World literature. The research also focused on redefining the literary periods like Romanticism in the Indian context. The program led to successful translation workshops focusing on Indian languages without the use of English. These efforts gradually built a comprehensive collection of materials about Indian literature and its interactions with global cultures. An interdisciplinary approach emerged emphasizing literature as a knowledge system, which became a major focus of later research. The study of oral traditions became a key area with collaborations between researchers and grassroots artists. These oral texts were seen as valuable knowledge systems that could provide alternatives to modern urban life. Dalit literature was also explored, examining how it subverts mainstream narratives and raises awareness about human suffering through performative elements. Research on the literary connections between India and its neighboring countries uncovered long long-standing cultural exchanges. This led to an international conference on South-to-South dialogue, which explored themes like travelogues, the portrayal of Burma in literature, and the connection between Perso-Arabic and South Asian literatures. This expanded the scope of comparative literature research beyond regional boundaries. Sixth one is interface with translation studies and cultural studies. Comparative literature today engages deeply with translation studies, which helps understand literary relations through translation. Translation is also seen as a form of rewriting, enabling engagement with other cultures. Cultural studies examines the relationship between literature and other forms of art, including the study of subcultures, gender, and identity politics. Courses in comparative literature also focus on urban rural representations and the social functions of performance. These studies look at rituals, theaters, and everyday life, offering insights into social behavior and cultural practices. Interdisciplinary approaches are common, with literature remaining the core of the field. Seventh one is non-hierarchical connectivity. Comparative literature today aims for non-hierarchical connectivity between cultures and regions. Concept of co-construction by Kumkum Sangari. She focuses on subtle histories of translation, circulation, and extraction. Comparative literature seeks to construct literary histories without dividing regions or traditions, promotes civilizational gestures against divisive forces, fostering human creativity. Continuous effort in expanding the boundaries of knowledge through literature. In conclusion, comparative literature in India has evolved by integrating global literary theories with the country's rich linguistic and cultural diversity. The discipline emphasizes interdisciplinary approaches such as translation studies and cultural studies to promote a more inclusive and decolonized understanding of literature. It highlights the importance of exploring cross-cultural relations, marginalized voice, and non-hierarchical connections in future research. Here is my learning outcome. It helps me to understand the historical emergence of comparative literature in India, especially its roots at Jadavpur University. Recognize the role of India's linguistic and cultural diversity in shaping the discipline, and helps me to learn how interdisciplinary approaches like translation studies and cultural studies enrich literary analysis, explore the importance of decolonizing the discipline through indigenous theories and inclusive frameworks, analyze evolving research directions such as cross-cultural connections and the study of marginalized voices. Here are references. Thank you.
So my question is to Divya that how did the shift from influence studies to reception studies impact comparative literature research in India?
Okay, the shift from influence studies to reception study, especially impact on comparative literature, according to Shubha Chakraborty, is that the research on the local literature through the global implication, and especially in the needs of local literature through the include or expandation on the origin literature in the expandation of literature is reflect that the influence of the literature on the reception studies and especially on comparative literature.